Welcome, everyone, to Sherdog.com. This is Off the Chain, the weekly panel discussion show. I am your host, Ant Walker, Sherdog contributor. And, of course, I'm joined by a fantastic panel, as always. We're going to start it off with one of our senior editors. He's the jack of all trades. He does a little bit of everything, but he's mastered everything. This is Ben Duffy. Ben, how you feeling today, my man?
I'm feeling great. Excited for the show tonight. Lots to talk about.
Oh, yes. Yes, we do. All right. And next we have a Sherdog's resident stat expert, the man who puts all the numbers together and makes everything make sense, especially when I don't fact check properly. His name is Jay Pettry. Jay, how you feeling today, brother?
Hey, guys, happy Bobby Bonilla Day. I am so excited when this day rolls around.
Man, Bobby Bonilla, that's how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Oh, he's caking out, man. He's caking out pretty hard, man. Shout out to him.
A million change a year on July 1st. You can't beat that with a stick.
All right, and now the rotating fourth chair today is occupied for the first time by a Sherdog contributor, a kind gentleman, a wonderful soul. They call him Patrick Auger. Pat, how you feeling today, my man?
I'm feeling good, man. Feeling great. It's Canada Day, so I'm glad I'm here in the USA. I don't have to deal with that crap, That's great.
And there goes a third of our audience right there. Thank you, Pat.
There goes a third of our staff anyway.
Yeah. The views expressed by this panel do not reflect those of Sherdog.com or mandatory media. All right, so, gentlemen, let's begin because we do have a lot of things to talk about. And we had a very busy weekend, as usual, in the combat sports media life. So let's get started talking about some of the happenings of UFC Minneapolis, a.k.a. UFC on ESPN3. So I want to ask you guys, I'm going to start with you, Ben. What's next for the UFC's heavyweight division now that Francis Ngannou has knocked out Junior Dos Santos?
It may not be popular with the fan base in general based on what I've seen, but I think it's time for Francis to line up for another title shot. He has looked fantastic, and Stipe Miocic handling him in the way he did is looking more and more impressive in hindsight. Because when you fight Francis Ngannou, you know exactly what you need to do. You need to get out of the way of the Ford Escort that's going 30 miles an hour or whatever it is. But how many people have successfully done that? I think it's time for Ngannou to get another title shot. That's what's next. It's also time for Junior Dos Santos to re-examine his life choices in and out of the octagon. I cannot think of another fighter, maybe in the history of the sport, who has taken more damage in the cage or ring relative to his actual chronological age as Junior Dos Santos. Like, you think of some of the wars he's been in, and there have been multiple fights that I've said have shaved years off this guy's life to the point where I don't know how much life he has left. Like, he's taken some incredible beatings, and he still continues to fight to his own strategic detriment in the cage. So I love Junior Dos Santos. He's one of the truly good guys in the sport, one of the most consistently entertaining heavyweights to watch, one of the greatest heavyweights ever to put on the gloves. But I am a bit concerned for him.
I can't disagree with the concern over Junior Dos Santos. I mean, that was pretty rough to watch him go down in that fashion, and we've seen him go down in that fashion several times. We've seen him go down in worse fashion several times. So at a certain point, you do have to start being concerned about how much life is left in Junior Dos Santos as a professional fighter. So, Pat, I want to ask you, what do you see next for Francis Ngannou after beating JDS in such fashion?
I think it's a title shot. I don't know who is more deserving at this point than Francis. I mean, he's gone out there. He's finished his last 3 opponents in under 5 minutes. I mean, and not just any opponents. JDS, who has taken a lot of damage in his career, but was on a 3-fight win streak against Tai Tuivasa, Curtis Blades, and Blagoy Ivanov. I mean, who else is there? It's got to be Francis. And I know Dana's kind of playing games about giving him a shot or whatever. If anyone else gets the shot, the only other person I can see is if Brock Lesnar somehow comes back, gets a money fight, but otherwise, which wouldn't be great. But I think that's for sure what's going with Francis. On the JDS side, I agree. He's taken a lot of damage. He's looked good in his past 3 fights before that. I was surprised about how good he looked coming back from that suspension that with the tainted supplement. But yeah, there's definitely some concern there. Although I will disagree with Ben that Darren the Damage Elkins has taken more damage in his career relative to his lifetime, I would say.
Tattoos don't count.
No, have you seen a Darren the Damage Elkins fight? Have you seen? Go back and watch him fighting Alexander Volkanovski. When at the end of round 2, before the camera cuts out, his face hits the ground because he can't walk. That I'm just saying. But that aside, yeah, I mean JDS, I don't know. I don't think he necessarily has to hang him up yet, but he's got to be thinking that he's got maybe 2 or 3 fights left. I mean, I can't imagine.
And to clarify, I'm not necessarily saying he needs to hang him up, but he at least needs to reinvent himself as a fighter. I mean, look what Overeem has done since I would have told him he needed to hang him up. You know what I mean? He just needs to figure out, like, JDS 2.0.
Right.
That's all. But anyway, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Jay, I just want to know if you're in agreement with me about this. I think this was more about the level of destruction that Francis Ngannou is capable of, as opposed to how Junior Dos Santos is aging in the fight world. Because of the strategy that he employed, I mean, you can't overcommit with a striker like that. And we've seen JDS get tagged up by counter shots a couple of times before. It's just that, Blagoy Ivanov doesn't hit as hard. Nope. And that's just a basic fact. So Jay, what do you think is next for Ngannou, and how do you feel this ties into JDS's future?
Well, I'm not 100% on the Ngannou title wagon for one reason, and it's not because he doesn't deserve it. It's not because he knocked out those 3 in 2 minutes and 22 seconds. Are you kidding me? Just destroying former champions like that? No. It's because of what they're about to do in August. What they're going to do with Cormier and Stipe, and actually it's going to be in Anaheim, so you're going to be going and covering it for us. So the implications of that fight are huge. If Stipe wins, he's the champion, and we move on or whatever. If Cormier wins, I mean, he's been pretty vocal saying this is it. I was going to fight Jones, I was going to do that thing, but I'm getting too old for this stuff. I want to finish off and retire with Stipe. So he beats Stipe, he retires. Belt is vacant. The belt is vacant. And then what do? Stipe's lost 2 in a row. There's not a lot for the division if DC wins and retires. I mean, other than like Jon Jones coming out. I mean, look at the top 10. Stipe would have, again, he lost his last 2. Dos Santos, just what happened. Blades, he's 0-2 against Ngannou, so we're not seeing that again. I don't think anybody would ever want to see him fight Derek Lewis ever again. Not after that thing they delivered on our doorstep over 15 minutes. I mean, I think Overeem's still asleep from that knockout, so that's not happening. And then what else? Volkov, maybe, but then Kane, Oleinik, Abdurakhimov, Ivanov, they just aren't the names to put up there against Ngannou. So that makes me wonder if they should do like I'm going to say the word, a tournament. Because you have Ngannou, the clear number 1 guy, the number 1 contender, should be gone fight for the title next. But then on the chance that DC does what he does and beats Stipe again, we're stuck. We're stuck. He's the king without a throne. And then what do we do? Where do we go from there? And Dos Santos, I mean, he's how many? What is he? 35 years old. He's only lost to Stipe and Kane and Overeem and that thing, and so a Brazilian guy early in his career. I don't know if it's done yet. It's just he decided to go for a big off-balance right hand, and Ngannou decided, no, we're going to do it my way. So I don't know if he's done, but I mean, he's done. He won't fight Ngannou again.
All right, as far as JDS, I'm more thinking about him in the lines of someone like Miguel Cotto, where after the Margarito fight, he just was never the same. Damage-wise, his face would just swell up like there's no tomorrow, and he would wear that damage a lot worse than he ever had. And you just saw a little bit left of him. A little bit of him was left behind in the ring that night. I think that's kind of what we're seeing more with JDS. That with each one of these violent finishes, that there's just something left behind. Now, of course, he could do the Overeem rebrand, change his style up, and become more defensive minded, incorporate a lot more offensive wrestling into his repertoire. I mean, that was something that we wanted to see from him just for the competitive sake of this fight. That would be sort of the thing that we've seen Ngannou fall victim to, and JDS is capable of employing. It's just something that we kind of knew he wasn't going to do, because that's just not the Ngannou that we've come to know and love. All right, but gentlemen, I do want to ask you this: buy or sell? Is Francis Ngannou the hardest puncher in UFC history? Pat, I'm gonna start with you.
Yes, I think he is. I mean, at this point, I would have loved to see him. I mean, fight someone. I'm trying to think if he's gone through anyone that has a completely granite chin, because that would be the real test for me. If he's,
Lewis.
like Lewis, yeah, Lewis is a big one.
He'd have to actually throw a punch though to test that chin.
That's true. Yeah. That doesn't count as much as it should. But I mean, even then, Lewis, I don't know that Lewis would have survived it, given that JDS was able to, knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see like prime Mark Hunt chin versus or prime Roy Nelson before he got a little bit long in the tooth. But I mean, I can't imagine, based on the way he's knocked these people down. I would say Curtis Blades is a good example in both of his fights. I mean, Stipe, he hurt Stipe, and Stipe has a pretty good chin. I mean, DC got him with that perfect shot, and Struve got him, early on with just some uppercuts after an eye poke, and can get into that. But I mean, Stipe has a really good chin. So I would say yes. There's nobody else I can think of where I instantly am like, oh well, they're hitting harder than Francis.
All right, so Ben, I'm gonna throw a name out to you and tell me whether or not this name could potentially be a harder hitter than Francis Ngannou. Rumble Johnson.
They would be 1 and 2 for me. The thing about Ngannou, and this feels ironic to say, considering so much of his hype is built around him punching the censor thing at the UFC Performance Institute, but I don't know if Ngannou is the hardest puncher in terms of how hard he can punch a pad under laboratory conditions, but in terms of in-cage power. Because, I mean, in the cage, you're not fighting under laboratory conditions. It's 2 moving bodies, 2 moving objects, each trying to enact whatever strategy they're doing in the moment. But his ability to, in whatever position on the feet, get his feet under him, get his hips and shoulders in the right place, and deliver his best strike or close to his best strike with a punch is unparalleled. I mean, he is probably the hardest puncher in UFC history in a live fire setting. I think Rumble is right up there as well. Rumble's really best kill shots have been on guys who either... I don't want to take anything away from Rumble, because he is a terrifying human being, especially in his like Uber Rumble that he's like walking around at the bare knuckle events now.
Right.
But in terms of what Ngannou has done to resisting heavyweights under live fire conditions, he is the hardest puncher in UFC history.
All right, Jay. So what do you think as far as Francis on the scale of hard hitters in the UFC? What's your take?
Well, first, I'd like to read you something, a prepared quote, not my own, but a very familiar name of the UFC president, Dana White. Francis Ngannou has the world record for the most powerful punch. His punch is equivalent to 96 horsepower, which is equal to getting hit by a Ford Escort going as fast as it can, and it's more powerful than a 12-pound sledgehammer swung full force overhead. In addition, he broke the record, as we mentioned, the punch, the sensor unit thing, for 129,161 units. Units. What units? Girth units? Power units? I've actually looked this up.
Ford Escort units.
There is no metric other than relative to the other people that have punched it. Derek Lewis's and Cormier's and all those other guys. Anthony Joshua, I think, did that too. I think, didn't he have the record Anyway, just a bunch of other old names on that list that have punched it. I don't know yet if it's weird to say, but I don't know if we're there to see if he's the hardest puncher yet. Like, just from the number perspective, he doesn't have the most knockouts from punches. Rumble Johnson does. He's got 6, and Ngannou has 3. Doesn't have the most one-punch knockouts. You got Hunt and Roy, obviously. Those are one-hitter quitters, and Pedro Hizzo was, back in his day, was also a one-shot kill guy. And Ngannou has 2, so he can easily get there. But I wonder if this is a flat line, here it is, period, or if it's like a mantle to grow to, kind of like pound for pound, and kind of like those other rankings we have to say, okay, we've seen him fight 15 guys, and he's done this, maybe. But I still got to go Rumble. I remember when he did in World Series of Fighting, went up to heavyweight, fought Andrei Arlovsky, and rearranged him. He gave him a free dental examination. It was gnarly. I hadn't seen much like it. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to say that, but he's not far off, even if he isn't yet.
I want to add another wrinkle to this discussion, because what makes me really lean toward Francis Ngannou being the hardest hitter in UFC history is that he seems to be the rare sort of person where no matter what, you have to fight perfect against him. You have to be perfect, and that's the only way you're going to survive. And we don't see that very often. I mean, you look at some of the other historically great hard hitters like Rumble, like, say, a John Lineker or something like that. You've seen people able to deal with their power and figure out a way around it. Mm-hmm. And they themselves had to be a lot more technically perfect than Ngannou has proven himself to be. When you look at Rumble, for instance, the DC fights, now keep in mind, Daniel Cormier does have an ungodly chin, that he was literally taken off his feet and knocked back by Rumble, but he got up and he put on a clinic after that. With a rematch, almost the exact same thing happened, and he did it all over again. We saw he had a hot start against Vitor Belfort. That didn't last too long until Belfort kind of regained his bearings, and next thing you know, he's tapping out. But with Francis Ngannou, it's like if you make one slight mistake, that's probably going to be it. Cain Velasquez has, not the best of double leg takedown attempts against the fence, and he's done. Overeem, excuse me, not Overeem. Well, yeah, Overeem overcommitted on some punches, found himself getting taken out.
Mortal
JDS
Kombat
the
style.
same. Yeah, and JDS, who previous to last night, or excuse me, 2 nights ago, was considered the best boxer in the UFC in the UFC's heavyweight division. And you see him overcommit on just one punch after having a little bit of success, and being able to avoid a lot of those hard strikes and even dropping him with the leg kick. Yeah. He makes one slight mistake, and 71 seconds later, he is put to sleep. I think that's power that whether he's the hardest puncher in UFC history or not, I don't want to get hit by him or a Ford Escort. Hard pass on that. Okay, so staying in line with UFC Minneapolis, let's go ahead and continue down this train of thought. So the main and co-main events of UFC Minneapolis were billed by the promotion as title eliminator bouts. As we were just discussing what's next for Francis Ngannou, we all seem to be in agreement that some version of a title fight should be on the horizon for him. But after the dust settled, Dana White said he wasn't so sure, and he pulled back from these promises. So why do you think that is? Why are now we're having doubts about whether or not the main and co-main event fights were indeed title eliminators? I'll start with you, Ben.
I don't know why he would say that in the context of the main event. Ngannou is a pretty logical choice for next title shot in the heavyweight division. He could not have performed any more impressively for the time that the fight lasted. So I don't even know about that one. The co-main event, again, I don't know unless he's making some sort of pronouncement on the fate of the flyweight division in general, because Benavidez looked very impressive. He repeated a win he'd already had in his back pocket. But I actually thought, I picked Formiga to win, but even if he didn't win, I was expecting Formiga to look a lot better Like, I knew Benavidez was going to destroy him the first time, but this time just Formiga's striking had looked so much better in the last few years. He was less of a defensive liability on the feet. Just really seemed like a solid boxer. So I have no idea why Dana said that, except that he is an emotional guy who shoots from the hip sometimes. So I have no idea why he would say that. But if they were de facto title eliminators going in, I can't think of any reason why they wouldn't be coming out.
All right. Jay, what's your take on this?
I'm pretty sure in the promos and the hypes and the screens they put up to say, they're on the pay-per-view, say, check out this next event. I'm pretty sure the words title eliminator actually were included this time. I know in the broadcast they did say that they didn't say, maybe they said this is a heavyweight, this is the heavyweight title eliminator. They did everything besides Bruce Buffer say it. I think, it's the logical choices. Why wouldn't you? There are 12 guys at flyweight. Who are you going to put in there? You're going to really give it to Dustin Ortiz? No, that wouldn't make sense. You're going to give it to Matt Schnell? No, that doesn't make sense. So it didn't make sense other than the Cejudo situation. Now it's that trap that I mentioned recently on an earlier show about the champion in two divisions never defending the belts. And this could be that kind of situation because he's out until the end of the year, maybe next year with the shoulder surgery, Cejudo that is. And he may decide to defend against Aljo Sterling or Peter Yan or, I don't know, Uriah Faber is what he said. So, okay, why not? Let's get weird. But there's not really a place for Cejudo there, or for Benavidez there. And in flyweight, he's the next guy. He has a win over the champion. What are we doing here? If we're not going to make that happen, then just throw the division away. And heavyweight, the only thing that I can think of for heavyweight is what I said earlier about what if DC wins and then Stipe has lost a bunch and he's out of here, then we don't have another guy to fight him. So I that's the only thing that makes sense, because what's the better logical alternative? There isn't one unless they want to throw in Bork Laser for the heavyweight title fight. There just isn't anything.
All right. I was thinking the hesitation, at least about heavyweight, had more to do with Jon Jones than anything else. Daniel Cormier emerges victorious against Stipe Miocic. Perhaps you can throw enough money to Jones to convince him that, hey, let's take this fight at heavyweight, and it could be Cormier's retirement fight. And of course, that would make sure that Francis Ngannou is on the sidelines if he doesn't take another challenge in the meantime. But Pat, I want your take on this, man, because this was an idea that was brought up on my my personal YouTube channel when I did my post-fight show afterward. Someone suggested having Henry Cejudo fight Joseph Benavidez at Bantamweight. So do you think this is a possibility, and this is why Dana White was hesitant to declare the flyweight co-main event a title eliminator?
Yeah, I think it's a definite possibility. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say it's set in stone. I wouldn't say that that's the way he's even leaning, but I think it's going through his head because, after UFC 238, we got a verbal commitment out of Dana in the post-fight press conference that said, no, the flyweights are sticking around.
Yeah.
But up until that point, they just keep getting released. There's 10 of them, 12 of them now. You don't have enough to have a full 15 rankings is how many flyweights are in the division. I would not be surprised if Formiga gets cut after this loss, despite what he's done. So it's one of those things where between wanting Benavidez to move up or to have Cejudo fight Aljo and the fact that Cejudo's out for a while with this surgery, I think he walked that back because of all those factors. I think that he's really going to he's going to sit back and wait for Henry to heal up and then see all right, who really makes sense? Is it, Aljo? Is it Benavidez? Is it Bantamweight? Is it flyweight? Who knows? And talk to Cejudo about it, because who knows what kind of conversations they're having in the background. Cejudo's talking about going up to featherweight, all that. It's, who knows what's going to happen with that. With heavyweight, I think it's two things. I think Jon Jones and the allure of that fight is definitely there, especially if DC wins. Even if DC wants to retire, I could definitely see the UFC throwing enough money at that to be like, no, we need you guys to do this
one more time.
Yeah, and I think another thing is I think that's a contract negotiation tactic regardless. There have been a lot of rumblings about Francis and his management being a little hard to work with, especially his coach and agent, about some negotiations back when Francis was getting the shot against Stipe. I wouldn't be surprised if that's Dana just like pulling back a little bit so that he can kind of dangle that carrot and say in the back end, like, oh, well, who knows? Jones versus DC could happen, or who knows? We'll see how this title fight goes. Maybe Brock will come back. Maybe Anthony Rumble Johnson will come back. Maybe we'll throw a bunch of money at him. So I think that's a big part of it at heavyweight too. But I mean, it's Dana, like at this point, if you believe everything Dana says, or you even believe a promised title shot in any way, shape, or form, you're kidding yourself. I mean, I'm not surprised he walked it back at all. It's clearly there's something he's not 100% committed to about it, and who knows what will happen with either case. But yeah.
Yeah, if you're taking the word of Dana White as gospel truth, I pray for you. I don't really think there's much else to say about that one. All right, so also on UFC Minneapolis, a statistic that I'm sure, Jay, I know you were on, that a lot of people didn't realize was going on here. Now, we have Donald Cerrone standing atop the UFC's record books right now with 23 wins. Damian Maia earned his 21st win in the UFC over Anthony Rocco Martin. Maia only plans to fight a few more times, but do you think that with those few more times, he can end his career with more wins than Donald Cerrone, therefore making him the #1 winning fighter in UFC history? Jay, I'm going to start with you.
Nope, don't think so. Sorry, Damian. I love you, man, but I don't think so. Now, Maia himself has already said, all right, I know my title shot ship has sailed. I know that they're not going to even pretend to give me another title shot. They won't even sniff me in the conversation. Now, whether that's because he's aware of his own performances or his age or whatever, but he is at least cognizant enough to know that, okay, maybe I should just have fun. And then enter Diego Sanchez, who Sanchez has been kind of calling and saying, I'd love to fight Danny. It might be a fun challenge. But that's one of those end of the career fun fights more than it is, I don't know, anything else. But it doesn't make much sense given their styles, other than one major factor. Sanchez had never, ever been submitted by anybody. And he's fought some killers over the years. So maybe Maia wants to take that one. But it doesn't mean anything. There's no divisional implications. He just wants to fight Sanchez in Brazil, probably at the end of the year, like a November. I don't have the schedule in front of me, like a November card, Sao Paulo or Rio or wherever, and call it quits. But by the time that happens, Cowboy Cerrone will have fought 2 more times, and he'll fight guys that he can work on. So he'll be up to 25 by the end of the year, unless he takes time off for family and, I don't know, jet skiing while in a jet plane or so. I don't know, whatever he does.
Cerrone time off? Come on now.
I mean, maybe, who the heck knows? But yeah, I'd say by the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if he racks up 25. So Maia would have to stick around for a long time. And he's already said, I'm getting too old for this stuff. Might have to go to do grappling competition. I might do quintet and play with Kazushi Sakuraba or something. That might be what I do in the future. Oh, by the way, hey, real quick, happy birthday, Sakuraba. He's 50 this month.
Yep.
Oh
my
wow.
gosh.
Wow.
That's it.
We are
Yeah.
all getting old. Except you, Pat. You look all youthful and spry. So with that youthful enthusiasm, please tell me, do you think Damian Maia will be able to surpass Donald Cerrone's record?
Not a chance. Not a chance. I would bet so much money against that. I would bet mountains of money against that. So Cerrone, as Jay said, Cerrone's going to probably fight 2 more times, especially since he lost. When I talked to him at UFC 238, he said, I asked him, if you win this against Ferguson and then they want you to step in short notice against somebody else, is that the first time they'll turn Dana down? And he said, yeah, that'll probably be one of the only situations when I don't step in or I'm going to wait for my title shot. But that didn't happen. He lost to Ferguson, even if it was in a doctor stoppage. He's going to be fighting at least 2 or 3 more times this year. And even if he didn't, even if he said, you know what, I'm going to take the rest of this time off, I think Maia probably only has 1 or 2 fights left in him, and that's the way he sounds. So I think Maia could maybe tie him for a minute, but Cerrone is going to fight next year if he doesn't fight this one. There's no stopping Cerrone from taking that record, unless Cerrone just gets really awful really quick or decides to fight opponents in welterweight that can body him and really stop him so he just doesn't win, it's not going to happen.
All right, so I'm of the belief that Damian Maia will not touch Donald Cerrone's record either, but my reasoning is a bit more nuanced than just the fact that Cerrone stays active. I'm basing my opinion on the way that he beat Rocco Martin. Now, typically, we've seen, we know Damian Maia is a one-trick pony. This is something that we've accepted a long time ago, and this is why we consistently watch him and why he's either the most entertaining or the most boring fighter out there, because we know exactly what we're going to get. However, this was the first time since probably Mark Munoz at 185 that Maia was neutralized and reminded us how singular his threats are, but it wasn't from a championship caliber opponent. Now, while Anthony Martin is a rising contender, and he's been riding a wave of momentum and has been getting better from a technical standpoint, he's still not a guy that we consider a threat to the title. So Ben, are you with me in agreement on this? Is this partially because of a potential decline in Damian Maia at 41 years old, or is it more so that Cerrone just stays active?
Even if Cerrone retired tomorrow, Maia isn't catching him. I think Maia fights one more time if he wins, twice more if he loses. I think Maia is definitely on his way out. So yeah, Maia's at 21 wins right now in the UFC. Cerrone at 23, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Maia reaches 23. I think he's out fairly soon. And I mean, he may not even have like virgin territory to go over by the time he fights Sanchez. I mean, Sanchez is fighting Michael Chiesa in a week or two, right?
He's fighting him this Saturday.
He's fighting him this Saturday.
Right.
I've got Chiesa by submission. I think Chiesa is going to break the cherry.
Wow.
Well, sloppy seconds for Damian Maia.
Well,
assuming that fight even happens, I mean, and I won't take anything away from Sanchez. Not only has he never been like submitted, but he spent the first 20 fights of his career all the way up through when he had his first loss period to Koscheck and went like 16-1 or 17-1 or something. Mm-hmm. Not only did he not get submitted, his whole game plan involved him spending the entire fight in his opponent's guard. I mean, that dude swam in shark-infested waters for the entire first, 5 years of his career and just beat the living hell out of people and, shrugged off their submission attempts. That was his whole game. He was, this, little cross between, mini Fedor and, the Tasmanian Devil. He would just take people down and, wail on them, and they couldn't even try submissions on him. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing on the ground. And was it Alex White that he handled within the last year?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Alex or Craig, yeah, one of those two. Yeah,
Alex White. Yeah.
He's an extremely savvy guy on the ground. But yeah, I mean, if that fight even happens, it'll be a different dynamic by the time it does. But I have the feeling that Maia is out of the game sooner than later, and I don't think he reaches 23 career wins in the UFC.
Right. And speaking of Sanchez, he handled Mickey Gall since then with largely the same sort of strategy. And then on top of that, at the LA Media Day, Diego Sanchez hypothesized that he could be a welterweight title contender if the rest of the division caught the plague. So there's that. I just want you guys to reflect on that sort of happening there. Okay, so we're going to move on to the lightning round. Gentlemen, you have 30 seconds. And in fact, where's my watch? Here we go. Yeah, I'm going to look at my watch right here. We got 30 seconds to answer a question here. We're going to start with you, Pat, with a win. Does Ben Askren get the next welterweight title shot?
He shouldn't, but he will. I mean, he'll have beat Lawler and he'll beat Masvidal, who struggles against trying to win against Maia. I mean, he's got enough charisma going behind him. He'll get the next title shot. If he wins, especially in emphatic fashion, gets a submission, it's done.
All right, Jay, what about you?
Yep. Yeah, I think he does. I really do. Woodley was going to fight Lawler, and that thing, he got hurt and he was out. So Colby stepped in. Despite the fact that Colby's on a 6-fight win streak, Robbie's 1-3 in his last 4. Fight makes sense. Okay, replacements. You got to fill the fights. Usman has nothing to do. he could have fought Colby, but that they didn't put that together. I don't think he's injured. So Woodley's out of the way. Everybody else is out of the way. Askren could basically lay and pray Masvidal and still probably get a title shot. All he's got to do is get by Masvidal. But I mean, Masvidal is like a split decision away from beating everybody in the world.
Ben, what's your take?
There's no justice in the world, but yes, if Askren beats Masvidal, he gets the next welterweight title shot. I think the Lawler fight showed that he's carrying a bunch of personality and hype into the UFC, and it is perishable goods. I mean, he is a beatable fighter. He has vulnerabilities. If he wins, they're going to strike while the iron is hot. He'll get the next title shot if he beats Masvidal.
No love for Colby Covington on this panel because I agree. Ben Askren with a win over Masvidal will get that next welterweight title shot, and I think the fact that Colby Covington was booked against Robbie Lawler says a lot. Robbie Lawler is not on a streak of fire right now. He is, as you said, Jay. He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. He's been finished. In a couple of those, or at least one of those, coming off a long injury layoff as well in the mix there. He is not riding a wave of momentum. He is, but Colby Covington, had a belt. They clearly don't care about that belt, although he's going to bring this belt out and parade it in our faces. Ben Askren is the guy. Strike while the iron's hot. Totally agree. All 3 of you gentlemen are right because you agree with me. All right, number 2. And I'm going to start with you this time, Ben. What would defeating Holly Holm do for Amanda Nunes's career?
Another gigantic feather in her cap. And I'm the only person on the planet who thinks Holm. I mean, I think Holm has a really, really good chance in this fight. I think she's being written off prematurely going into it. And Pat is looking at me like I'm out of my damn mind.
I also think that, but go ahead.
Oh no, you're doing that because you agree.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. I thought you were looking at me
I was like, only person's like.
I was like, oh, dissension, yes, dance, puppets dance.
I mean, right now, Amanda Nunes has stoppage wins over 2 former UFC bantamweight champions in Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey. She also beat the 2 previous featherweight champs, Chris Cyborg and Jermaine Durandemi. She's 2-0 against the current flyweight champ, Valentina Shevchenko. Oh, and by the way, she knocked out Julia Budd, who forever we've thought was the second best featherweight in the world after Cyborg. If she beats, if she beats Holly Holm, what else is there? She's already arguably the greatest female fighter we've ever seen. It is signed, sealed, and delivered if she beats Holly Holm.
All right, Pat. What do you think? What would defeating Holly Holm do for Amanda Nunes's career?
So here's the thing. I think I agree with Ben that I think Holly has a great shot, and I'm actually going to pick Holly to win this fight. But that being said, I think this is almost a lose-lose for Nunes. I mean, they're propping it up to be like, hey, you're beating, the person that dethroned Ronda and all this stuff. But in terms of she's expected to beat Holm. Like Holm is, at bantamweight is 1-3 in her last 4. I mean, she beat Betch Kohei and that's it. She lost to Jermaine Durandemi. Well, that was a featherweight, but she lost to Valentina. She lost to Miesha. I mean, she's not, this ungodly force. I think that this is one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, you beat that last threat, but it's not on the level of Ronda or, Miesha or Cyborg. It's kind of like, oh, you beat the last person that could possibly beat you. Congrats. Whereas for Holm, it's like, hey, you get another title shot despite going 2-1 in your last, or 1-2 in your last 3. Awesome. Congrats. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
All right, Jay, what about you?
So in all the divisions that have had more than 3 champions, if Nunes beats Holly, she'll be the first one to ever beat all the previous champions. All of them, and of all those divisions. The only other one you can compare is Conor McGregor by beating Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo was the only featherweight champ at the time, so that doesn't really quite compare. And Ben said 2 wins over Shevchenko. She beat the only 2 featherweight champions in the UFC. I mean, with this win, if for some reason that anybody doubts that she's not the best fighter in the world, I mean, apologies to Megami Fuji. I mean, a win is that's it. That's it. A win is the end of the debate. There's nothing left. There's no other fight for her at the division that really, in any division that really makes sense. Kat Zingano, who's 1-4 in her last 5. Ketlin Vieira, I mean, sort of. She had a split decision win over Zingano, so that's not a big. I got to say, this is the final legacy fight, I think, for Nunes.
All right. So, while Ben is getting his drink refilled,
Magic,
we will.
Yeah, my dad.
Wow, that is impressive.
Valentino won that second fight. I said it. Go ahead.
Oh.
Oh, shut up!
I disagree wholeheartedly.
It was close, but I had Nunes.
Valentino won that second fight. I said it. Go ahead. I said it.
All right, gentlemen. So the last of the lightning round. Can Jon Jones be considered the greatest of all time after multiple failed drug tests? Jay, I'm going to start with you.
At the very, very least, there has to be a big asterisk next to his name for all of his accomplishments, all of them. I don't think you can just stop at the first drug test when he popped for clomiphene and letrozole, clomid and letro. When he popped for those two, you can't say, okay, then everything else is tainted. I think you got to kind of look around at everything else, especially those low TE levels when he fought Cormier the first time at 182, and then he popped for Turinabol, a steroid. So, I mean, they're pushing for him to be the greatest ever, the greatest that has ever walked the world. And then Stephen A. Smith is also on that new promo that wasn't terrible, but I don't know. But it's hard to look somebody in the eye and go, yes, he's the best that's ever been. Because then you think other guys, Anderson Silva, TJ Dillashaw, that would be considered the far and away or greatest that have ever in the division on that pop too. But people are less likely to credit or discredit Silva because he popped after his legacy. He lost his belt and TJ in the middle of it. But I don't know. I'm not comfortable enough saying he's the best. I still have GSP.
All right. Oh, just made it under those 30 seconds, man. Beautiful. All right, Pat, what say you, man? Can Jones be the greatest of all time despite his drug test failures?
No, I don't think so. But I think there's a little bit more to it than that. But yeah, I mean, he popped for things that are not naturally found in your body. In my opinion, personally, that kind of just instantly, not once, multiple times, that kind of disqualifies you from being the greatest of all time. I would also say, on top of that I think when you look at some of his, I mean, he puts on clinics in there, right? You can't take away from his abilities at all. He's super skilled. But in terms of strength of schedule, there's a little bit of leeway there too. And I think that plus the combined drug test failures kind of puts him in kind of I don't see you as being a GOAT over GSP or Anderson Silva. I mean, it's one of those things where he beat a lot of strong light heavyweight contenders originally, but then after that, it's been kind of the recycled same people. DC is great. Gus is pretty good. But I mean, other than that, I don't know. Division is too shallow.
All right, Ben. What do you think?
I don't have too much problem with Jones's strength of schedule. I mean, on his way up, he beat a murderer's row of the other greatest light heavyweights in history, and then a win and a vacated win over DC, who is, I mean, a top 10 all-time fighter himself. I mean, it's an impressive resume. I don't discount his accomplishments entirely based on the test failures. Certainly, they're diminished, and certainly there's an asterisk by his name. And for me, it's enough to drop him below George St. Pierre, just as kind of a tiebreaker. So as of right now, no, he's not the greatest of all time. But going forward, they would not prevent him from buffing out his resume to the point that he was.
All right. So I guess I'll have to drop my take on this very quickly here. I'm kind of not sure what to think, because when we start talking about the greatest of all time and failed drug tests, well, Anderson's failed a couple. Then Fedor spent a lot of his career in Pride, where drug tests weren't a thing. So when we look at the different eras of mixed martial arts, we're in a very, very slender point percentage-wise of the amount of time that we've seen MMA as we know it today with the amount of time it's been thoroughly drug tested by USADA. And even then, we're calling a lot of things that USADA is doing into question. So I don't want to go full on Luke Thomas here, but I do have some hesitation in just saying that someone can't be the greatest of all time because of drug tests, considering that so many other all-time greats weren't even tested and in some cases encouraged to do steroids. So there's that. But keeping along the Jon Jones train of thought here, he is fighting this weekend at UFC 239 against Thiago Santos. So Santos right now is looking at he's a plus 450 underdog. Jones at a minus 600 favorite. Do you think Thiago Santos can do the unthinkable and dethrone the unbeatable Jon Jones? Pat, I'm going to start with you.
I don't. No, I don't think it's possible. I will say that. I mean, I think Thiago hits hard enough that if he gets lucky with a big shot, it's possible. It's kind of the Rumble, not the equivalent to it, but it's kind of a lesser version of Rumble versus Jones that we never got to see. But I can't imagine that Jones isn't going to pull it off, whether that's by submission, whether that's by, keeping range and just kind of, bodying him up. Like it's Thiago is one of those things where, he either seems to just land that perfect punch or he just seems to kind of go everywhere. And I think that Jones is good enough that that's not going to happen. In terms of the card as a whole too, I mean, I like it. I think it's a great card, but I would have liked to see Santos Ngannou back on there. I'm a little mad they had to move that, and then like O'Malley dropped out. But yeah, I don't think that Santos gets it done. I kind of hope it does because it'd just be great. Because then what do you do with that division? But yeah.
All right, Ben. Tell me, man. Do you think Thiago Santos does the unthinkable and gets the upset win?
No, I don't think he does. I think it's not even as close a matchup stylistically as the UFC would like you to believe. Nobody has beaten Jon Jones yet in the cage, with a legitimate win. But the person who does beat him, if he ever loses, is not going to be a person who has only one way to victory. If you only have one weapon against Jon Jones, he is going to fucking destroy you. And he is going to destroy Thiago Santos. I mean, he's gotten incredibly good at managing distance. I mean, 8 years ago, he had kind of this weird slapdash stand-up game that worked because he was such a freakish athlete and such a lanky dude. But now he's a solid guy on the feet. He's not going to take any stupid shots, and he's going to get Santos up against the fence. He's going to get underhooks. He's going to tip him over, and he's going to elbow the shit out of him. I have Jon Jones really, really big in this one. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way I see that one.
All right. So, yeah, I think one thing that we have to remember is that at any time, Jon Jones can just take you down and just beat the hell out of you. And that's sort of the thing, like we're thinking about Thiago Santos standing up and banging and trading and charging in, kind of doing what we wanted to see Anthony Smith do when they fought at UFC 235. But at the same time, man, we saw when he fought Alexander Gustafsson in the rematch, it's like, okay, I'm not absolutely destroying you on the feet right now. Okay, let's just take it down real quick and end this night.
Boom.
Yeah, and then that's kind of what I think is going to happen here. So, Jay, give me your thoughts on this main event and just the card as a whole. What are you feeling about this?
Well, I'm really feeling it. I wrote something months ago about the main card order: Jon Santos, Newt Holm, Rockhold Blachowicz, Askar Masvidal, and Dos Santos Ngannou, which would be arguably the greatest main card that has ever happened, just in terms of potential on paper. Give me that on paper. Anyway,
Pat is not feeling it.
No, he isn't. and this is probably rule number one that I shouldn't do. But the only fight we lost of that was Dos Santos Ngannou because it moved a week earlier. So I gotta say, this is a pretty handsome card we have going here. We got Sanchez Chiesa is the opener for the pay-per-view main card. That's pretty solid. But it feels like every year we get this new scary knockout threat at light heavyweight, and he's just barnstorming his way through the division. Volkan Ozdemir and his little boots. Anthony Smith destroying Rashad and Shogun, and he beat Volkan, I think. And Thiago Santos. It's just the next terrifying force, the next tornado of fists and feet and everything like that. Jones has an 8-inch reach advantage. Thiago Santos likes to wing punches, So they're not going to be as straight, generally speaking. So Jones is going to be able to utilize that advantage even more, unless he plays stupid, unless he decides to brawl with Thiago Santos like he obviously totally will. It's his fight to lose. It's the kind of thing where you have to stop and look and say, okay, Santos has this ridiculous power, but he got tapped out by Eric Spicely 3 years ago. I like Eric Spicely. He's a good guy. CES, I love CES. New England represent. But Eric Spicely tapped him out with a rear naked choke 3 years ago after taking some hard shots. And David Branch knocked him out like 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago. So Santos isn't this unbeatable, destroying force. He's just got crazy heavy hands, and he happens to land more often than the guy that's punching him back does. The Blachowicz fight, the Manoa fight. He got dropped a couple times, I think, in the Manoa fight too. He just dropped Manoa more. So I just can't see Jones, the way Jones fights, eating a couple of those big shots at all.
Oh, yeah. I'll ask a question. What is the worst lapse in fight IQ by Jon Jones in the cage ever?
Excuse me, I'm the host. I asked the question. Gentlemen, what is the worst lapse in fight IQ by Jon Jones ever in the cage?
There are no bad ones.
He kneed Anthony Smith in the head and almost got DQ'd. What are you talking about?
That's a pretty bad one.
Okay.
If I'm Anthony Smith, I'm still concussed from that.
Right, and if I'm Anthony Smith, I'm saying I can't continue, and I'm taking my belt and my money and walking out the arena.
Absolutely.
Okay, if that is the worst, if that's the worst in-cage decision we've ever seen him make, in the worst case scenario, he has 2 losses by DQ to guys he was completely destroying, and it's done no damage to his legacy.
So I'll add one bit of bad fight IQ on him, but this also speaks to his greatness, really. He used to have a very nasty habit of when he was doing his ground and pound, he'd straighten that arm out and brace himself on his opponent's torso.
And post up on it, yeah.
Right. So after Vitor almost snapped his arm, we've never seen that happen again. You have one chance to capitalize on a mistake that Jon Jones makes, and that's it. There's no other opportunities presented after he shows one slight mistake. We saw Lyoto Machida be able to close the distance on him and give him some trouble in that first round in sort of a mid-range. We haven't seen that happen ever again. Jon Jones is a savant and a computer when it comes to mixed martial arts strategy and technique. That is a scary man. Thiago Santos is highly, highly unlikely to get it done. If you have like $100 or something that you don't need to see again, go ahead to the betting booth and pray for the best. But if you are in any way, shape, or form on the struggle bus, if you are wondering where rent is coming from, if you open up your cabinet and you see ramen noodles, you are not to put your money on Thiago Santos.
And if you're going to put money on Thiago Santos, you might as well take the prop on first round knockout.
Yeah, that's
true.
Well, I was thinking about that. I don't think Santos, he hasn't knocked anybody out in the first round in a long time.
He has not. No, I mean,
it's weird.
He and Manoa definitely lit it up. But if it goes to the second round, the chances are out the window because Jones has already adapted like the Borg. So take the prop on first round knockout. And if it happens, you have more ramen than your children can eat in 50 generations.
So, I mean, think of the rematches. Think of the rematches he had with Gustafsson and DC when he fought them a second time. He fought them very differently. I mean, the first Gustafsson fight was so close, and he got busted up. He played the game. He kind of played into Gustafsson's game. He didn't do that in the second fight. He let DC get a hold of him in the first fight. He had that, what I think was the fourth round. He had that big up and over just to say he did it. Oh, I took Jon Jones down. That didn't happen in the second fight. I do not recall even close to happening. And he tested positive for horse steroids. But the point is he adapted his style to do that. And I just see that the computer likeness of Jones just, yeah.
He tested positive for actual horse. He was a centaur in the case that night.
He shared a meal with Overeem.
Overeem's so hungry.
Him, Frank Mir, and Overeem all got together and just,
Yep.
Kangaroos and horses.
Oh, yeah, kangaroos and horses. That's
the
right.
meals of champions. All right, so gentlemen, so we're gonna introduce a new segment to the show called the Buried Lead. So this is where we share an MMA story that hasn't gotten a lot of coverage, not a lot of people are talking about. So Pat, I'm gonna start with you. What's your buried lead for the week?
So my buried lead, I guess I have two, but my main one would be that Daniel Cormier did a detail. I don't know if you guys saw that at all. They were advertising it, and it nothing was really said about it. But I went ahead and I watched it, and man, like I love DC, but man, like that was bad. It was not. It
That's a
was.
shame.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it did not sound like if you watch a Kobe detail or even a Peyton Manning detail, then you go watch DC's detail, it's like keep working at it, man. That's my advice. Keep practicing. But yeah, that was bad. And then yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah, somewhere Robin Black is smiling. Jay, tell me, what is your buried lead?
Well, since I don't want to step on another lead I expect is going to come, my lead is that MMA is now legal in France, which is a big deal. It has been banned. It wasn't that it wasn't legal. It had specifically been banned. I think the last ban was issued in 2016. Couldn't do it. You couldn't have in professional mixed martial arts type combat to try and get under the rules. You couldn't have ground strikes of any kind. You couldn't have any elbows standing on the ground. You could not fight in a cage. No cages. Cages were against the rules. Cages were verboten, or whatever the French word is. They're going to make up a sanctioning body of I guess a new organization made up of people from Muay Thai, kickboxing, karate, and boxing and wrestling, and those other federations to kind of pick and choose to build this new set. And the problem that they faced was the Judo Association was so against it, saying you're going to ruin the sport, you're going to ruin the sanctity of the sport and everything about it. It's barbaric, etc., etc. We've heard these stale arguments before, and they finally, through lobbying or force of will or whatever it is, finally relented, and it's now going to be legal to have professional MMA combat in the country of France.
All right. Yeah, the Judo Federation has been stopping the spread of mixed martial arts as much as it possibly can.
Oh, yes.
I guess they finally realized they are a dying breed and get out of the way because people want their MMA. Ben, tell me, what is your buried league for this week?
I appreciate Jay leaving this one to me. I kind of expected him to take this one and leave me to pick at the scraps. But on what would have been early Saturday morning in the United States, Cage Warriors 106. You know, Cage Warriors is, for the uninitiated, a UK-based promotion that is one of the 2 or 3 top promotions in Europe. Absolutely. You know, maybe the second right after KSW.
Yeah.
And their main event at Cage Warriors 106, which, by the way, it was called Night of Champions. It had 6 title fights on it, and nobody missed weight. That should be a world record right there. 6 title fights, all 12 people made weight. Mm-hmm. The headliner, between UFC veteran Nicholas Dalby, the Danish welterweight, and Ross Houston, was stopped because there was too much blood on the canvas and in the cage. And our friend, what is the name of the ref, the British ref?
Mark Goddard.
Mark Goddard.
Thank you. Mark Goddard, that we see at tons of events, stopped the whole fight, called it off. It's a no contest due to unsafe surface. And if you're anything like me, when you hear that, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And then you look at it, you're like, oh my God. Anecdotally, my wife is a nurse. Like, blood and wounds and disgusting shit that I can't stand to look at are her stock in trade. And I showed it to her, and she was like, oh, how are they in the... Yeah, like, she was completely disgusted. There was so much blood. The guys weren't even hurt that bad. Like, they were literally drinking a beer at the analyst table afterwards together, like clinking a beer and saying, let's run it back, because neither of them was dinged up that bad. Just Dalby got a bloody nose, and Houston got some kind of cut on his forehead, and like 3 quarts of blood made it. It looked like a bad made-for-TV adaptation of The Shining. Like, it was disgusting. And to my knowledge, it is the first time a fight has ever been stopped and declared a no contest in such a high-level promotion for this kind of reason. So, not the kind of world record you want to set, but it is something. Look up Cage Warriors 106. The promotion tweeted about it. They had a good sense of humor about it, but prepare to see a lot of damn blood.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just the internal Slack chat during that, about the results and how that was going to be classified was quite hilarious, as everyone was just debating about whether to call it a DQ due to murder scene or DQ due to crimson overflow or whatever other catchy little things that were said there. And so also another little known fact about the incident at Cage Warriors was that Conor McGregor actually came into the ring, shoved Mark Goddard after this fight, slipped and stained one of his mink coats. So that was a tragic occurrence right there. A mink coat lost in the bloody nonsense. I'm sorry, Jay. I know you wanted to say something, but I just had to let the people know that happened.
I did not know that last part. So I am excited to know that. I mean, it's like kind of like a PETA thing, except for for MMA. I wanted to piggyback on that because I did a little play-by-play because I knew about I was watching the card on my other screen when I was working on a Fight Facts piece, so I wasn't really giving it my full attention. I thought, oh, Nick Dalby, he drew with Darren Till. That was probably one of the biggest highlights in this undefeated Brit, and it's a title unification. So I wanted to go back and really kind of to see what happened. So first of all, I have to point out the cage floor is made of vinyl. Now, most ones you're used to on the promotions like UFC are made of canvas. Now, canvas is a good amount more expensive to sort of save money on promotions, and every event you have to get a new one. A lot of promotions go with vinyl. It's a little slippier, and if liquid like ice or, I'm sure Joe Rogan probably would freak out, gets on the floor, there's nothing to absorb it. It's just a slick surface. So about, I don't know, good part into the first round, Houston sliced Dalby right here in the forehead, side of the forehead, right where you can see like the vein if you clench, and it pumped. And so the doctor comes and checks it, and he says, quote, "I'm happy with it," because I guess whatever they did a good job fixing it. And he said, "I'm happy with it," in a very, very British accent. I'm not mimicking that. So about 30 seconds into round two, Dalby throws a right hand and just cracks at Houston's nose, and it's just pumping. I mean, he's not hurt. It's not a big injury. It's just a very bloody nose. It's the kind of nose that viewer discretion is advised. When he turned his head to the side, an actual puddle formed. It was almost grotesque. And because of this, Houston is on his back and cannot get to his feet because he's slipping around. He cannot get purchase on the surface of the floor because there's just the blood going on. It is a crimson slip and slide.
Well,
Dalby, Dalby and the two of them are just so messed up that Goddard said, "This is effing ridiculous. I'm concerned about the fight service, and I'm going to give it to the end of the round." And said, "No, nobody lost. Just this is it. Too much. It's too much for everybody. It's no more. No mas."
Oh, yeah. Wow. So yeah, while we're on the subject of blood, let's go ahead and I'll share my buried lead for the week.
Please do.
So on Instagram, Alexander Emelianenko has said that he is actually in negotiations with Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship about appearing in their ring. So a man who is known to have some form of hepatitis, whether it be B or C, was denied a license in the United States for Affliction. I think one other promotion denied him, maybe Strikeforce. I know for sure Affliction was denied a license to fight in the U.S. and Nevada said, or California said, like, he's not getting licensed in this country, period. KSW also would not allow him to compete there for the same reason. Oh, and not to mention that he is a convicted rapist. Yep. So either Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship has decided to expand international to where these sort of issues don't matter, and Alexander Emelianenko is still a fighter that can get a license, or they just said, the hell with regulation, and this fight might go down in Texas. So that is my buried lead for the week. And Good Lord, have mercy.
Considering how much time Alexander Emelianenko has spent in Russian prisons, he probably has a one-loss record at rape.
Oh. Oh, wow. And on that note, that concludes this episode of Off the Chain. So, gentlemen, please tell everyone, Ben, tell everyone where they can find you and where they can direct their hate tweets for that last comment.
At Benjamin Duffy. I'm an editor, contributor, and graphic designer at Sherdog.com. If you want to find what I do, just go to Sherdog.com, open the features page, and I'm on the little drop-down menu. Or, like I say, you can find me at Benjamin Duffy at Twitter.
All right, Jay, how about you?
Now, I'm on Twitter at Jay Pettry. I try and post every now and then if I can, usually about MMA statistics. So, you know what you're getting yourself into. I write the weekly column of Fight Facts, covering events that happen in major promotions, UFC, etc. So I'll be writing one up about this weekend's event, and it'll be quite interesting. And other than that, I'm just on all the coverage, and I'm here. If you want to look and read what I write, you can also, like Mr. Duffy, go to the little features section on Sherdog and drop down, and there I am as well.
All right. So, Pat, how can we find you?
You can find me at Twitter or Instagram at alldayauger. Auger is spelled Auger like Auger, but it's pronounced Auger. Big props to getting that right, everyone. I'm impressed. Glad we took the time to do that. And you can find my features at Sherdog. Normally do a weekly business piece, examining some stuff. Did a piece about Battlefield FC and Bitcoin that is pretty crazy. But this week, instead, I have interviews lined up. And I just got done earlier today with a very interesting interview with Julia Budd, where she reveals who she wants to fight after Olga Rubin, and it's not Leslie Smith. It's someone. It's Oh no, it's even better than that. It is someone you wouldn't even guess. It's gonna be juicy. I'm very excited to write about it. Look for that probably Wednesday, and it's gonna be. I don't think anybody sees this coming. I didn't see it coming, so I'm. Check it out.
Oh, the anticipation is building.
Oh, yeah.
Calling it now.
All right, so I am Ant Walker. You can find me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. I will be on the ground for UFC 239. The homie Pat will be around as a fan, so I will lure him away from his insane drunkenness to perhaps get a little work done, and we'll provide you some great coverage coming. Yeah, I don't.
Good luck.
Yeah, no promises on that.
He gets out of hand. I brought him on board at Sherdog while we were both well into our cups.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this will be.
And that was just at a bar in Belton, Texas.
We're in the middle of nowhere covering LFA, and I recruited him there. So expect madness.
Good luck.
All right, well, then you can check my Instagram page at Ant Walker MMA for some updates as I'm drinking with Pat and cutting loose. So also what I have coming up on Sherdog.com, you can find most of my work on the features page as well. I'm on that drop-down menu. The Trenches, the weekly live chat, will be coming to you Wednesday this week because the 4th of July, obviously, on Thursday. Also, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly will be written immediately after UFC 239. And I do have some interviews that will be released. I did a couple with Sean Merriam, the head of LXF, who is promoting the LXF2 event in Burbank, California, the same day as UFC 239. I also spoke with Chad George, Bantamweight, who is in his retirement fight on that event as well. So check out Sherdog.com for some of that coverage. And you know what you got to do. You must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. And through it all, no matter how drunk you get, no matter how bloody the floor gets, and no matter how much you slip and slide on a mixture of vodka, whiskey, and crimson, you must stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.